Welcome back to Spriggiver Homestead. I'm Nikki, and today I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of an update on our mealworm project. So if you remember, I started raising mealworms for the quail. Buying the freeze-dried mealworms, while convenient, is kind of expensive. And really, they lose a little bit of nutritional value by the time you've dehydrated them. They definitely lose water count. So they're kind of they're a slightly better food if you can get them live. And raising mealworms is super, super easy. So I started in these totes, and then of course I've got a couple of the big 10-gallon aquariums, and I'll kind of go through what's going on with these. So I have a couple of different stages going on in the totes. Primarily I've got the beetles. I've got another tote for my pupa, and then I have totes where the beetles have been moved out, so I am waiting for them to hatch before they go into the bigger tanks. So here we got a beetle habitat. And what I've done now is I've divided my beetles up into groups of about 250. I'm not sure what my overall goal is going to be. I'm kind of still feeling my way through this to see how many I want to actually produce. They're not exactly real labor intensive, which is nice, but they do take some time. There's some sorting, some cleaning, and they only need fed about once a week. So I've got... These are my older beetles, so these guys are about a month old. Now, beetle habitat number 2 is just getting started. You can kind of see, and it might be kind of hard, you can see how much lighter in color these beetles are. These are all much, much younger beetles. I think I pulled 12 out of the pupa this morning and moved them over. So these guys are going to be a little bit younger. Now, what they tell you is beetles last about 3 to 4 months. And with those guys being a month ahead, probably what I'll do is in another month start yet another beetle colony once I get this one to about 250. I think I'm only probably about 75 beetles or so into this one. Remember, they start laying at 3 to 4 days. So you can kind of see some dark spots in the bottom where the females are going down in and laying their eggs. Now, I leave the beetles in here for about 3 weeks, and then I pull the beetles out and move them to another container. I take all of this substrate, and I dump it into another thing for hatching. So you're not going to be able to see any of this, unfortunately, because they're very, very, very small. But when I move my beetles, what I've been doing is I take all my beetles out, put it in another container, take all their substrate, and dump it into a new shoebox. And then I just wait. And it'll take... anywhere from 5 to 40 days for these things to hatch. Right now we're staying pretty warm in the house where I've got them, so they're hatching pretty well. The thing that's interesting is about a week after you've moved all the beetles, you'll run your fingers through the wheat bran, and you can see it moving, but you can just barely see the little tiny mealworms. These guys will stay in here for probably another 3 to 4 weeks before they're big enough that I can actually see them. Now, during this time, what I've noticed is no matter how much potato or vegetable matter you put in, they're really not eating it. They're mostly pulling their moisture out of whatever is left in the wheat bran. The big reason I'm doing my beetles this way, in particular, beetles produce better with a higher humidity level. So by keeping them in the shoe boxes with the lids on, when I feed them, it actually is raising the humidity, and the beetles are thriving in it. They love it. What I did notice is I get a little bit of mold sometimes in the wheat bran. It doesn't hurt the beetles, and it doesn't hurt the eggs, and it's not hurting the juvenile mealworms. But as the mealworms get bigger, they don't do so well in it. So the whole point is to get them through this part of the phase and into the bigger tanks where we can grow them out for the actual feed. The other tank that I have, or the other shoebox, it's not really much of a tank, is for the pupa. And we've talked about that before. That's what the mealworms go through before they become beetles. And the reason I have the fun little tubes, because of course the pupa don't do anything, is for this reason right here. It makes it so much easier to catch the beetles once they emerge. So I've got a few new beetles, it looks like, that need to go into the newer beetle group. And we'll get those in a little bit. Now, let's take a look at the big tanks. Okay, so this is the older of the 2 tanks. And you can see we've got quite a few mealworms in it. This is where all the bigger worms are. This is the tank we are feeding out of right now. So I'm still having to watch this tank. For Pupa, I get still 1 or 2 a day. It's slowed down dramatically as I've been on top of feeding it. And down at this end, of course, we've got some peppers that they're eating. And you can kind of see all that moving right there. We've got quite a few of them in there now. A pretty good group of mealworms. They're getting some size on them. I've been feeding them on Mondays, as far as feeding them out to the birds. And my production is still varying. I'm kind of afraid to overfeed and slow everything down. So I've only been feeding 1/4 to 1/2 cup each week to the birds. The quail are getting them, and the chickens. The thing that I have found, while everybody uses potatoes, carrots, parsnips, that kind of thing, root vegetables, I've actually found that these guys way prefer things like, I've got some green peppers here that were getting a little soft. This thing's been in for just a couple minutes. You can already see the worms are in it. So green peppers, cucumbers, squash, and melons. After you've taken the bulk of the melon out and just kind of left the rind in there, they will pick that clean. So that's kind of what I've been doing with them. And then let's look at the other tank. Okay, so this other tank is where they're going after they graduate from the other shoebox. So these guys have hatched, and they're probably going to be really hard to see because they are much smaller in this tank. Let me see if I can find some. Yeah, you can just barely see that little guy there. So most of these are 1/2 inch or smaller. They are just now starting to actually get in and eat the vegetable matter, or depending on, some people say, no, they're just kind of burrowing holes in there to suck the moisture out. But whatever they're doing, they're just now starting to really do that. So I'm still feeding them once a week. And they're just now really starting to get active. You can kind of see all that moving there. There's a good little knot of them in there. It'll take a while. It'll take a few weeks. The big thing I've now realized with these guys is the more you feed them, the faster they grow. So I'm trying to do better at consistently feeding them about once a week. We're getting better growth, and that makes for very happy birds. All right, so there you go. There's our little update on how the mealworms are going. Now, like I said, how many beetles am I going to end up with? I'm not real sure. I've seen different channels say you need to have at least 500. I've seen other people say you need to have up to 5,000. Kind of depends on how often you're going to feed and how much room and how much time you want to spend managing them. So I don't have an answer on how far I'm going to go with these yet. This is a system that's working okay for me. As we get back into summer, I don't know, I may not want this many boxes and containers to manage and may have to go back to a different system altogether. But as of right now, that's what we've got going on. They're doing quite well. Never thought I'd be much of a bug fan, but I'm kind of interested in these guys. The whole process is kind of interesting. And the quail are very happy with the fruits of my efforts. So as long as the quail are happy, and at least while they're alive, the bugs are happy, we'll probably keep doing this. So that is it from Sprague Homestead. If you have questions about what I'm doing, feel free to leave them in the comments. Remember, I'm learning as I go through this, so if you have suggestions, feel free. But that's just kind of where we are with it. And that's it for today from Sprague Homestead. Happy homesteading!